Johnny heads to Pennsylvania with Joe to meet a friend and horse lover.
Amanda's a real horse advocate, big-time rescue.
Amanda Servino, a horse activist and sister of Oscar winner Mira Servino, needs Rescue Inc.'s help in the case of a Nurse Mare farm.
Rescue Inc.? How you doing?
Hey, Joe.
What's that, Nurse Mare farm?
It's kind of like a puppy mill for horses.
With billions in revenue every year, thoroughbred racing isn't just a sport, it's a business. Horses bring in millions, and their foals can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But there's a little-known business that feeds into the racing industry that horse activists oppose: the Nurse Mare farm. Because of the worth and demand for prize-winning foals, thoroughbred owners often impregnate their mares as frequently as possible. Less valuable horses are rented to nurse the prized foal. These horses are called nurse mares. To keep them lactating, the nurse mares are often bred repeatedly.
What's born is a worthless foal, supposedly, that gets ripped away from its mother days after it's born.
The nurse mare business is a legal agricultural practice, but activists find the treatment of the less expensive foal inhumane. These young horses are often sold at auction to the highest bidder. Eventually, they could end up at a foreign slaughterhouse. The last of the U.S. horse slaughterhouses was ordered closed in 2007. But nearly 50,000 horses were shipped to Mexico for slaughter in the following months.
There's no problem with the law, nothing like that.
There are no laws whatsoever to protect these babies. There's nothing.
Pressure from critics has motivated some nurse mare farms to consider new standards. Amanda would like to see more foals sold to advocacy groups that will find them homes. She's found a local farm owner interested in making a deal.
She is probably better than most nurse mare ranchers. She's willing to have us come out there and, meet her.
Why is she all of a sudden deciding that she wants to work with you?
In her conversation with me, in which she said, I'm doing this for the foals. I want to get them the best homes they can get. She said, I know this is a hidden industry, and it's too hidden, and it needs to come out in the open so that we can get these babies the homes they deserve.
Rescue Inc. needs to strike a deal that's good for the foals and good for the farm owner.
So I need you guys to come with me and help negotiate the price so we can save like 5 foals instead of 1 foal.
It sounds like something Rescue Inc. could help you with, Let's see what we could do.
Nice to see you.
Rescue Inc.'s in upstate New York with Amanda, a horse advocate and old friend of Johnny O's at a nurse mare farm.
How you doing? Joe.
Amanda hopes the guys can help her negotiate a fair deal for as many foals as possible.
Well, I guess I'm going to be showing you some foals. The majority of the babies are over on this side. Now these are a couple that were just taken off their moms last week, and they're drinking. They've got milk in front of them.
How old would you say they are?
These are 2 weeks old.
2 weeks old?
Foals typically nurse from their mother until about 4 months old.
Just want to get this straight. So you breed these horses so the thoroughbred horses have milk
For their babies, right?
Right.
Rescue Inc. wants to understand how Sandy's business works.
These moms, for the most part, they've left a very valuable foal that will eventually go on the racetrack. They pretty much, have to be raised in company so that when they go out on the track with other horses, they're not afraid of them.
So you're actually socializing.
My mares are raising them. If you want to put it that way, yes, it's a socialization process that happens in the equine world.
Say I produce a thoroughbred horse, and I want that thoroughbred horse to be fed as I want to reproduce another one as fast as possible. So would I come to you?
If your thoroughbred horse was an old mare who had a hard time keeping her body weight up, they're going to take her off of her foal. One of my mares is going to raise her foal, and then she's going to be put back out to pasture for 30 days till her 30-day heat so that they can get another foal out of her. because she's valuable.
But your horse to provide milk for this new horse coming in, she would have had to have been pregnant.
Absolutely. These are the produce of those mares, yes.
Okay.
Do find homes for all these mares, right? You do find homes for all
For the babies.
For the babies, you find all homes
I
for them.
try to.
What happens to the ones that aren't so lucky and don't get adopted out? Should we say adopted?
Well, I don't like the term because there's activists who use that term, and I don't adopt. I sell. I sell.
Rescue Inc.'s going to have to work hard to make a fair deal.
Sandy. Hey, there you are. I'm very impressed, by the way.
Yeah.
I may be a little quiet, but I'm very impressed. Absolutely.
I do my damnedest.
Sandy's ready to start negotiating.
I've been asking $500 for the chestnut, and I've been asking $1,000 for the smutty palomino.
The price is much higher than Rescue Inc. expected. The guys ask Sandy how she comes up with the number.
Because I'm selling them off the farm, and they're healthy off the farm.
Normally, Rescue Inc. would never pay for an animal.
As long as they go to... I hate to talk money about animals. I really don't like to do this.
If the guys want to ensure these foals a good home, they'll have to make an exception.
All right, you're looking for a deal. I'll let you take them all for $200 a piece. And that's coming down.
$100 and we'll call it even.
I have bills to pay, too.
Yeah, I know, but these people want to take good care of this animal. Just give them the animal, you know what I mean? It's going to go to a good place.
What do you mean give? What do you mean give?
100,
They pool their pocket money.
20, 30, 250. That's what we need, right?
You're getting it.
I have no idea. Meet me in the middle for 125. Meet me in the middle for 125. You got a deal.
Finally, Sandy agrees.
You don't gotta hug me. I'm very aggravated that we had to spend 125.
I'm not.
Rescue Inc. splitting the cost for 5 foals with Amanda.
A little negotiation goes a long way. You know, I do a little stroking, and Joe and Anthony go in there for the kill. Works every time.
Rescue Inc. will be back as soon as possible with a trailer to transport the young horses to a temporary stable.
It's a pleasure doing business with you.
All right. We'll
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Rescue Inc.'s ready to transport 5 young foals to a stable where Amanda boards her horses.
I like to see that, you're not just, we heard some horror stories about people just letting, the foals go.
Well, I've heard the horror stories, too. I've heard the horror stories on nurse mares.
Yeah.
And I've disrupted that.
The guys have gotten 5 foals, but a bigger issue still exists. Joe believes thousands of young horses across the country need to be rescued.
We can't stop this from happening, but we could surely help the babies, the byproduct of the whole breeding process for the thoroughbreds. Is somebody fought?
No.
4 hours later, the guys arrive at the foals' new home.
How was the ride? Good? Everybody happy in there?
They look scared. They don't know what they're in for. They're in for a nice new home.
The foals are hungry and need to eat.
Let's go. Come on. Hey, Joe? Yeah, long journey for you. It was a long journey, huh?
Amanda gives the guys a lesson in bottle feeding, but the animals are skittish.
He's sucking. You got it, Amanda.
Beautiful. Wow.
Ready to go.
Why don't you hold this one for me?
Come here, buddy. That's okay. That's all right. Get it in there. That's okay. Good boy.
Where's my money?
I think they're much happier already.
Yeah.
It's awesome that we got 5.
If you need anything else, just give us a call.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So much.
At their new home, the foals will get the care and nutrition they need. If they're lucky, they may even get adopted.
Please stop the Monterey Downs racetrack. Call Mayor Rubio. He's the one that has brought it back to the table. That number is 831-899-6700, or you can Google Mayor Rubio, Seaside Mayor, California, and his information will come up. Contact him. Let him know you don't want a racetrack in Fort Ord after seeing what happens to nurse mayors. I want to take a moment here to share with you the Hall of Shame of supervisors for Monterey County. Those would be Supervisor Phillips. He just came into office. Salinas and Armenta voted against the ban on fracking in Monterey County March 2015, saying that there really wasn't any evidence to prove that fracking was harmful, which means that these supervisors didn't even bother to educate themselves. So I am going to educate you a little bit for those of you who do not know what this decision means. They also said they wanted to wait for the state laws to come out. But Supervisor Potter and Supervisor Jane Parker said it couldn't hurt to have the ban in, so while we were waiting for those state laws to be discussed and formulated, that there could not be any ban on fracking. There could not be any fracking in Monterey County. Now remember that fracking takes about 1 million gallons per well, and it has thousands of toxic, non-biodegradable chemicals that are injected into these wells as well. So I really hope that people are going to start voting for good supervisors, supervisors that care about our health, about our county. That's what's important. I also want to thank Supervisor Potter and Supervisor Parker who voted to ban the fracking. I hope that you will thank them for caring about your health and water and county.
Please leave a voice message for Thank you for calling Chesapeake Energy Corporation, the nation's leading producer of natural gas. Yes, may I take a message?
I'm looking to see if we could interview someone on the subject of natural gas extraction and hydraulic fracturing. One day I got a letter in the mail. It was from a natural gas company. The letter told me that my land was on top of a formation called the Marcellus Shale, and I would receive a signing bonus that was nearly $100,000. Could it be that easy?
The Subcommittee on Energy and Minerals will now come to order. There are numerous deep shale gas basins in the United States which contain trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. Some experts as a virtual ocean of natural gas.
You've probably seen ads on television hailing natural gas as the clean-burning transition fuel.
We've cracked the code for natural gas supply.
The method of gas drilling they use is called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. It blasts a mix of water and chemicals 8,000 feet into the ground. Was I actually going to become a kind of natural gas drilling detective? Okay, I guess. Everywhere I went, it was the same story. Water trouble.
They never had a problem with the water. After they drilled, the water was bad.
Oh, man.
Health problems.
I'm never healthy.
Hazardous explosive conditions inside the house.
Whoa. And all those dots you're looking at here are oil and gas wells. This is happening everywhere. That's the biggest thing I want people to know. I have samples that are from all over the country.
I'm wondering if you're interested in drinking some of this.
So we have 10 billion cubic feet of gas going through the town of Fish every day. So some guy is going to be cooking his hamburger one day and blow up the town.
The #1 environmental crisis that we face in the city.
This is America. We shouldn't be assuming that corporations can keep a secret, especially when they're practicing in our backyard.
Dutch Sense here. 1:48 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, January 10th, 2015. And I've got you looking at Earthquake 3D here. The last 24 hours of earthquakes, 4.0 and greater internationally, 2.5 and greater in the U.S. And we got a few things going on here I want to draw your attention to. We'll start out here in the Pacific. We have a small earthquake swarm happening in Hawaii, and this is happening on the flanks of Kilauea, so I think we can probably expect to see some increased lava flow at the Puna lava flow. And if you guys aren't following that, you guys can come over to my Facebook page where I've been making posts, or over on my YouTube page where I've got a couple lava flow video updates. And I know a lot of people aren't really interested in the small lava flow. However, it's looking like it might break out a little more because of the activity there. But I want to draw your attention to what's going on in the United States over the last 24 hours. Since I've made my series of earthquake updates about the fracking operation down here in Texas and Dallas and in Snyder, producing back-to-back earthquakes, and a series of borderline 4.0 earthquakes over the last 24 hours in Oklahoma, the media has picked up these stories. And I'm going to put a link down below to a 10-minute video on fracking run by RT of all people, where they interviewed professional geologists and seismologists regarding the fracking earthquake issue, and they fully go into it. And the professional fully confirms everything that I told you over the last several years. Everything. Also, in the same time that that aired, we had a series of earthquakes that developed at more fracking operations, the most recent being just in the last 20 minutes, a 2.6 struck in Trinidad, Colorado, back at the Trinidad fracking operation. Also, 2 more earthquakes at the western Yellowstone magma chamber edge in central Idaho. And I've got links down below this video for all of this, so you guys can go source out, read about the magma chamber, how they did new measurements, and found out that it goes from the park here in western Yellowstone all the way over into central Idaho, the magma chamber. And it goes down to something like 700 kilometers, but over at this depth it's about 200 kilometers. So the area below Idaho is being displaced, and it's causing an earthquake swarm at that location. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the earthquake in Colorado, since there was a lot of denial about the Colorado earthquakes being man-made, and I received a lot of flack over the last couple of years. Now that the professionals have confirmed every other area that we're talking about, Ohio, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, South Dakota, North Dakota, I want to draw your attention to the earthquakes in Colorado, and we will get that on the map. Now, speaking of being on the map, once this loads, there's so much detail that has to load here because of all the wells. We're not just talking about a topography map that has to load, we're talking about an actual picture, and each one of these is a frac well. Let me zoom in. We got a little pond here. Here, look, you even got a truck out there back in the backwoods. We've got our little shack, we've got our apparatus, and we've got our tank with a pipe. And each one of these, let me zoom in. Okay, they have a little overflow pond that they either draw water from or sometimes spit water out into. And that's wastewater, guys. These are wastewater injection wells. What they'll do is they'll inject water deep down into the ground, something like 5 million gallons per well. They will pump down into the ground and fracture the shale. What they found, and as you'll see in the video I've linked below from the professional, that puts fluid into fault lines that they did not map. Per the professional, all the fracking companies up until recently didn't map the fault lines they were fracking into. They weren't forced to, they didn't have to, so they didn't. So there's fault lines in these areas that are being literally injected with liquid. And that's causing movement in areas that they weren't expecting. And professionals say that could get upwards of larger earthquakes. Now, we already know 5.0 earthquake struck down here in South Colorado. That's why we're watching the area now. 5.0 struck in 2011. Also 5.0 in Oklahoma, 5.0 in Arkansas. Boom, 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 within a few months of each other. And in the same day, literally within the same 24-hour period as the 5.0 in Colorado, there was that 5.9 that struck on the East Coast, caused damage to the Washington Monument. You guys may remember that just a few years ago. And that was near a frac well as well, over here, which was right next to a nuclear reactor. So they were fracking within a few miles of the nuclear reactor, and the 5.9 struck right there in Virginia. Now, in the far northwest, we've seen a series of smaller earthquakes, and this is going to fall on you guys to go look up, but I want to show you what exists at the location in Nevada, okay? So let's just go ahead and get the coordinates from the USGS for the Nevada earthquake. Okay, now you heard that ding. That was actually a borderline 6.0 earthquake. This may be revised up to a 6.0. 5.8 just struck in the Philippines on the main island, one of the main islands of the Philippines. So that may cause some damage over there. We might hear about that. The depth on that is rather shallow compared to the other earthquakes that have happened in the region over the last week. Let's just take a comparison. The higher these are off the planet, the deeper they are into the Earth. So that one kind of falls mid-range between all the other deeper 4 and 5.0 activity. So you can see all these here. There's been a lot of movement in the West Pacific. But I digress. Let's get back over to the United States. Right now we're looking at the earthquakes over the last 7 days. See this swarm here in Nevada? We could pull any one of these earthquakes' coordinates, and let's just do that. Now they listed as Oregon, but it's actually Nevada. So let's pull the actual geo-coordinates on this. I'm going to show you what resides at this earthquake epicenter. I've shown people before, haven't done a video on it in a long time, so let's just go look. I'm not going to spoil this for you either. I'm going to let you guys see, as I zoom in, what I found. Okay, so here's our earthquake epicenter, and here's a previous earthquake that happened on December 4th. Now there's been so many in this spot, and you can see that this is clearly a multiple mile long fault zone that goes right up here. It follows right up. You can follow the split. These are fault lines, okay? But what exists upon the fault lines are very interesting. We've got a few buttes. If you guys understand about volcanic buttes, we've got a few in Southern California near Salton Sea, geothermal. These volcanoes, these small buttes, have magma chambers down below that rise, and they'll raise up and split the earth above at the surface level. So what we're looking at here is clearly an old lava flow from an old rift a long time ago, an old fissure that formed from a butte that's here, and you can see the edges of it, but it's ancient. Each one of these plateaus has an edge that's exposed, and you can see that the edge is made of old lavic rock. And you don't have to take my word for it. I'll put the geo-coordinates for this down below. You guys can come and look along the edge of these plateaus and inspect the basalt that's there. Now we have basins here, lake beds. These basins and lake beds are at the center of what appear to be old volcanoes. These were most likely at some point volcanoes which collapsed and then formed into basins, maybe even undersea, very, very long time ago. So here's the butte that I was zooming in on, and it's Telltale Volcanic Butte, a small mound rising out of the edge of a fault zone, and surrounding it, lavic basalt, lava rock, red lavic rock. And there's a series of these, not just one, a series of small buttes all over the place here. So Yellow Peak is a butte. You can look up each one. Now, of course, Google Earth doesn't have each butte marked. There's Table Butte. And when you inspect the area, you'll find that there's these areas littered. This area is littered with volcanoes. Not too surprising, considering the whole area, the whole fault zone here, just to the west, is, well, larger volcanoes, and we're talking very, very large, marked by the USGS, with somewhat fresh lavic flows, as you can see here. So, what's going on here, right there, that we just looked at, is here, and it's been weathered away. A lot of these earthquakes here, let's get back over to Earthquake 3D, when they first began, started at the surface, 0.0 kilometers, hundreds of them over the last several months, and now they've progressed deeper. What does that mean? I don't know yet. We're trying to figure that out, actually. We're trying to figure out what's going on here in northwest Nevada. Is it a new butte forming? Is it an old butte rising? Will we see some surface activity at some point other than earthquake activity? Who knows? But when you look at the area around it, look at the area, how it's swarming to the northeast at the Yellowstone Magma Chamber here in Idaho. And then you follow the edge of the craton, which I've been talking about ad nauseum for so long. You can trace the dots. You can connect these dots from the Pacific Northwest down here through Idaho, down to Texas, and then back up here to the 2.7 up in the northeast. This forms the edge of the craton, the edge of the unsubducted plate. Relatively stable over the last several, quote-unquote, hundreds of millions of years, and according to the professional who I quoted at the start of this, literally eons of silence in some of these areas where they're now having movement due to man-made activity. At the end of the broadcast, the professional and the RT guy talk about fracking California and fracking the fault lines from the northwest down through California, and how that could lead to a larger earthquake. And they discuss that and say it's possible. Again, these are the professionals. These are not, conspiracy theorists online that people accuse of fear-mongering. That's what I got accused of when I'm showing earthquakes happening at the fracking operation in Colorado, for instance, for the last several years. People down below my videos came and accused me of fear-mongering, saying that there was no fracking connection. They said, you need to provide some professional sources showing that there's fracking connection, because it's just your hearsay. Meanwhile, I'm showing you a picture of the frack well right on top of the earthquake epicenter, and there is no doubt about it. Areas that are not normally seismically prone, such as Texas. We can go pull this coordinate here. I got called a conspiracy theorist 2 years ago for showing earthquakes in Snyder, Texas. Let's go look it up now. Now that the professionals are saying that it's fracking related, let's go look at the same area before and see how I could get called a conspiracy theorist for noticing an earthquake happening in an oil operation this big. Each one of these pads is an oil well or a frack well, and they have full-on compressor stations, pipelines to gather the stuff together, and people were telling me they were not related. It's just coincidence. That's what they said. Well, now we know that when you inject 5 million gallons of water per well down into a fault line, that it puts liquid and water pressure onto a fault line in such a way that it causes an earthquake. And they're worried that it's going to get bigger. And when you look at the size of the operation spanning here just in Snyder, Texas, from, well, gosh, where can I start my place marker? Because they just keep on going. Let's start from down here to up here. 50 miles of fracked oil wells, and that's just right there, guys. I mean, we know it goes on and on and on, and it's not just in Texas. I showed you the operation over in Colorado. You can look at the operation in Oklahoma. Each one of these operations goes on for miles and miles and miles, and they've done it around residential areas, lakes. I mean, look at this. Each one of these guys, and I got so tired of marking them, each one of these little squares, look, each one is a frack well built right next to houses, right next to lakes, reservoirs where they're injecting wastewater. And look, there's almost as many frack wells as there are plots of land. I mean, we're talking, one every house, every other house is now a frack well. Every other plot of land, on and on and on and on, from one to the other. There is no stop in between them. People have gotten greedy. Look at this. People in Oklahoma have gotten greedy. People in Texas have gotten greedy. People in Colorado, everywhere where this is going on, these people are greedy. Look at that. Look, each one, you say, oh, those must be mobile homes or something. Touch. No. Look, brand new houses right here. Here. I wonder if there's a street level view. Hey, there is. Okay, let's go zoom in. Look at that. Look at this nice subdivision. Look at this. And then, doosh. I mean, and sometimes they're even closer. Sometimes they're in the subdivision itself. Okay, let's go find one that's in a subdivision, and so we can see. You got this nice house, and then right next to you is a frack. Oh, look at this one. Look. Here's a nice house here. Here's a nice house here. Here's your backyard. I bet you one of these people that lives in these houses owns the frack well. Look at that.
yeah, you know, we got a little ice, or kids, you know, you're going to need to stay away from that. You know, there could be an off-flaring at some point that could burn down your neighborhood, and there may be a natural gas leak. And these houses, you better have good, strong foundation. Look at their mailbox. You're going to need a stronger mailbox, bro. As a matter of fact, I recommend making it out of plastic so it's a little bit flexible, because that's going to be breaking here sometime soon. All these houses are going to have fractured foundations. No joke. Again, okay, you don't believe me, right? You guys, you think I'm exaggerating. Okay, let's back this out and look at the earthquakes that have happened in the area that I've marked over the last, I don't know. I mean, we're talking thousands of earthquakes here, but the reason I marked these frac wells is because there were earthquakes there to begin with. Okay, so I don't even have all the earthquakes marked there. I can't. There's thousands of them. I would be sitting here all day marking the earthquakes that have happened in upwards of 5.0. 5.0, guys. I mean, we're talking major damage can happen in that 5.0 range. And this is just, to me, this is kind of sickening. Right? I mean, look at this, guys. Like leeches. Each one of these is leaching off the earth, and it's causing earthquakes. There's no taking this back now. There is no filling it in with concrete, filling the well in with concrete. There isn't. You can't. That's not going to be happening, guys. So you've done fractured your neighborhood. You've done fractured your whole region, and now it's spreading out in such a way that it's fractured the entire South, from Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, and then it cuts off right here around Yellowstone. You know, so some geologist said, you know, I don't know if we should be injecting water down anywhere near Yellowstone, so let's just not frack right there. But you guys can do some oil pumping, you can do some oil stuff, but let's not do that fracking. And then to the west, now the magma chamber starts moving, and then you got another set of fracking operations up here in the northwest. You can go check that out in Canada, which there's a big debate on in Canada, by the way, about those tar sands up there, okay? All right, this devolved into a little bit of a rant, but it needs to be ranted on at some point. There's nobody else that's going to do this. There's the professional that's coming out on RT. Of course, he can't say it like it is because he's got a job to worry about, but I'm going to say it how it is. You greedy sons of bitches, you're causing earthquakes in areas that, well, now there's no way to take it back. There's no way to stop it. We just have to wait and see how bad it gets. What happens when you fracture an entire area like that? Let me put it this way, guys. Let's say you've got a strong piece of stone that you put a lot of weight on, trucks drive across it, let's say, block of stone that holds up a bridge, and you come in and you start drilling that stone. Now you can drill it in a certain way that it's going to be okay, that it will be able to transfer that weight through the stone and not fracture. However, you come in and start drilling it this way, that way, horizontally, do lines through it, diagonally, and you drive a heavy truck across it, or you put any kind of load on it from any side, guess what's going to happen? It's going to crack at its weakest point where the drilling has caused a weak spot in the block. We're talking about a block, an edge of the craton being the block. It is being drilled all along the edge from here, down through here, back literally up the East Coast through, well, now there's a debate upon that in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, but they're doing it there too. This is the confirmed edge, the defined edge of the North American plate, which they are drilling out like they're drilling out cavities in a tooth.
The Hall of Shame supervisors for Monterey County are Supervisor Phillips, Supervisor Salinas, Supervisor Armenta. They all voted against the ban on fracking in Monterey County, March 2015, in our earthquake-prone zone. That's how much these supervisors care about you or your families. I have no words to describe how we can allow these kind of people to make decisions that can destroy our health, our county, our water, everything. And the two good ones who voted for the ban on fracking were Potter and Parker. They voted to ban fracking, and I hope you thank them for caring about your health and water and the county. And for those of you who think that, oh, we have to frack, believe me, they have a surplus now of natural gas. A surplus, and they're selling it to foreign countries. And the second largest energy producer in the United States is solar. So if those fracking companies would put their money into solar on rooftops, we wouldn't have this problem.
I can often hold a standard kitchen match to my water, and like I said, it is unpredictable, but the methane randomly travels with the water, and sometimes it will light quite spectacularly. Just like that.
Now, Chesapeake is going to say, well, there's natural occurring methane in the wells already. What do you have? What's your reply to a comment like that?
My reply is that their post-fracking test, their own, the methane tested 0.01 milligrams per liter, and since July of 2010, it has tested as high as 64 milligrams. So obviously something has changed.
And usually you can, that's it. They say as long as it aerates, it's safe to drink. And usually you can see a little bit of gas just aerating out of there.
You can thank Supervisor Armenta, Supervisor Salinas, Supervisor Phillips for bringing natural gas fracking to Monterey County. They voted against the ban against fracking in March of 2015. Unbelievable that these kind of guys, these kind of thugs, in my opinion, can sit up there on that board of supervisors and allow this criminal taking of our health, our resources in Monterey County to continue. Hall of shame, supervisors of Monterey County. Supervisor Phillips, Salinas, Armenta, they voted against the ban on fracking in Monterey County. And the good ones are Supervisor Potter and Parker, who voted to ban fracking. I hope you can Supervisor Potter and Supervisor Parker for caring about our health and the water and our county. Welcome to this edition of Meet America. We're going to be watching a segment on GMOs and the latest scientific findings of their dangers. I'd like to share with you briefly my journey concerning a health issue that is linked with genetically modified organisms, and it is a deadly fungus that is found in soybeans and is killing the soybeans. And I was recently diagnosed with sudden death syndrome in my gut. It was a very extensive blood test that analyzes the very chemistry of your blood, and that's how they were able to find that I had this disease. I told my doctor that I eat 95% organic, so I shouldn't have this disease. I'm also a vegan. I don't eat animal products, so I shouldn't have this disease. And I also take probiotics, so I shouldn't have this disease. But but apparently I do. So if I do, so do all of you out there have it. And I have since then been contacting the California Certified Organic Farmers Organization. I've contacted the Non-GMO Verification Project that's supposed to test for GMOs in your food and then verify that what you're eating is not GMO. And I've asked the California Certified Organic Farmers Association to alert their farmers that here in Monterey County, the heartland of the organic industry, Monsanto has a seed store. Any farmer can buy GMO seeds and plant them anywhere without anyone knowing where it is, which means that it can contaminate our organic industry. No one seems interested in the organic industry to come to the fore and ask our supervisors to support and vote for a GMO moratorium modeled after the Santa Cruz moratorium. So this is outrageous, folks. Organic is a big, big business. It's making a lot of money off your products, but who's watching the hen house? So it's very, very disturbing, and I hope for your sake you're going to fight to make Monterey County a GMO-free county before it's too late. And it may be too late already. Pharmaceutical corn is growing here, and it can spread for thousands of miles. Thanks for watching.
Genetic engineering. Scientists warn of link between dangerous new pathogen and Monsanto's Roundup. Biological warfare recently warned the USDA of a new self-replicating microfungal virus-sized organism which may be causing spontaneous abortions in livestock, sudden death syndrome in Monsanto's Roundup-ready soya, and wilt in Monsanto's RR corn, which they feed to cattle. On January 27th, Bill Sack gave blanket approval to all genetically modified alfalfa, following orders from President Obama. He also removed buffer zone requirements. This is seen as a deliberate move to contaminate natural crops and destroy the organic meat and dairy industry, which relies on GM-free alfalfa. Such genetic contamination will give the biotech industry complete control over the nation's fourth largest crop. It will also ease the transition to using GE alfalfa as a biofuel. Has been associated with infertility and spontaneous abortions in animals. Associations are not always evidence of cause in all cases and do not indicate what the reasons might be. These need to be established through investigation, which requires a commitment of resources. I hope that the Secretary will make such a commitment because many growers, producers, are experiencing severe increase in disease of both crops and animals that are threatening their economic viability. On February 16th, Paul Turkey of Safe Lawn telephoned Dr. Hubbard, who told him, "I believe we've reached a tipping point toward a potential disaster with the safety of our food supply. The abuse, or call it overuse, if you will, of Roundup is having profoundly bad consequences in the soil. We have seen that for years. The pathogen may be a signal that we've gone too far." Turkey also conveyed that while Hubbard admits that much further study is needed to definitely confirm the link between Roundup and the pathogen, in the meantime, he said, it's grossly irresponsible of the government to allow Roundup-ready alfalfa, which would bring the widespread spraying of Roundup to millions of more acres and introduce far more Roundup into the food supply. Hubbard, who has been studying plant pathogens for over 50 years, and glyphosate for for over 20 years has noticed an increase in pathogens associated with the herbicide. In an interview with the Organic and Non-GMO report last May, he discussed his team's conclusion that appearance of this glyphosate and immobilized soil and plant nutrients, rendering them unavailable for plant use.
On January 17, 2011, Professor Don Huber wrote a confidential letter to U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, alerting him that a team of scientists had discovered an unknown pathogen. The new pathogen was found in high populations in U.S. corn and soybean crops, specifically crops that have been genetically modified to be resistant to the chemical glyphosate and the #1 selling weed killer Roundup. The new organism was linked to an epidemic of plant diseases that had spread across Midwestern fields and found in cattle and dairy herds that were experiencing infertility and spontaneous abortion rates as high as 45%. Professor Don Huber is an internationally recognized plant pathologist and professor emeritus at Purdue University. For the past 40 years, he spent his career as a scientist working in professional and military agencies that evaluate and prepare for natural and man-made biological threats, including germ warfare and disease outbreaks. As a plant pathologist, Don Huber is among the most qualified scientists in the world to examine such a serious threat to America's food supply.
I'm curious why you wrote Secretary Vilsack the letter prior to the research being published.
He had a decision to make relative to Roundup Ready alfalfa. We didn't have answers that we needed in this area at the time, and when you start applying glyphosate directly to alfalfa, is it going to be similar to increasing the presence of the organism and the possibility in the alfalfa like it does in corn? If that's the case, we could very well lose the most critically important forage crop that we have for our animals. And it was a request for that funding so that we could get the answers and for him to delay a decision until the answers could be obtained. The intensity of the problem is such that we can't wait the 3 to 5 years to develop all of that research and then finally get it published.
These are preliminary results, findings that the science is still being conducted.
The animal scientists, veterinarians, it's not preliminary for them. They've very thoroughly documented what the cause of the problems are in the infertility and the spontaneous abortion situation. I had a report last week of 3 new herds one in South Dakota and 2 in Iowa. They're running 15% infertility. Regardless of how many times they tried, they couldn't get the heifers to settle. And then on top of that, they were running 35% spontaneous abortion. There's no way to maintain an economic viability in that type of situation, and that's what growers are finding. But in trying to find out what was causing our animal producers to go out of business, literally, because of the high mortality and inability to reproduce, that they started looking at the feed. Said, how are they being infected? Where is this organism coming from? They then traced it to soybean meal initially. Started looking at how the soybeans would be infected. And you can find it in soil, the organism. You find it internal in the mycelium of the sudden death syndrome fungus. You also find extremely high titers or high populations of this organism in soybean sudden death infected plants.
Can you tell us a little bit about the pathogen specifically?
The organism can be seen only in an electron microscope. Very small, about the size of a small virus. It's culturable, in other words, it can be grown in culture, which we don't find with the virus. It's not a prion, it's not a mycoplasma. Very small, does replicate, reproduce itself. Very common hitchhiker with other organisms. I mentioned that it's been found in the mycelium, inside fungi. It grows very well in the presence of bacteria. It's infectious to cattle, pigs, horses, poultry. It will kill a fertilized egg in 24 to 48 hours. Animal scientists have done the Koch's postulates, that scientific process of establishing cause-disease relationship, but it's just an ultramicroscopic organism that's capable of reproduction, so it's different from a virus. Very compatible with other organisms, appears to be very common in the environment, but for some reason much higher association and colonization or population when we have the glyphosate interaction all around a Ready, and especially where we see those diseases that are increased by the glyphosate. We see also the higher population of this organism.
Why are the issues with glyphosate relevant to the discussion about genetically modified crops?
Glyphosate is the chemical name for that compound that is attributed for herbicidal action. The Roundup is a formulated product that includes other components besides just the glyphosate chemistry in order to increase its penetration into plant cells or its activity as an herbicide. When you have a genetically engineered crop that's resistant to glyphosate, it not only permits the wider use of the glyphosate, the extended exposure to it, but it also permits then the application of glyphosate directly on that crop, which many times we're consuming. What you see is that after a period of time of continued use of just one herbicide and increasing rates of that herbicide, which have been very dramatic in the last 10 years, that you see pretty soon that entire groups of organisms just cease to exist in the soil. Now, you don't have a void in the soil, so that if you pull one group out, you have another group that comes in. You have this very dramatic change in the soil microflora and that soil biota that affects these soil-borne diseases very dramatically.
If I have this sudden death syndrome in my gut, which I have been diagnosed with through a very extensive blood test, so must all of you out there. What are we going to do about it? I'm trying to mobilize people to get the organic industry to start protecting what they're supposed to protect. Please call your supervisors and let them know you want a GMO moratorium when it comes for a vote. There's the number, 831-755-5066. Thank you so much for watching Meet America.
Stay tuned for part 2 of Meet America, coming right up.